In anime, people are obsessed with a lot of things, but usually what people are obsessed with is who's the strongest. Who's the strongest from a certain village? Who's the strongest in the verse? Who's the strongest in all of anime? And while it's fun to talk about feats that Goku has versus Vegeta, and therefore which should be stronger in Ultra Ego or Ultra Instinct, I don't watch anime with a pen and paper. That being said, that probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So today I want to defy the age-old trend of trying to find out who's the strongest and talk about who's the weakest? Specifically, today I want to talk to you about the weakest Kage from every village. Because on this page, we've talked about the strongest Kage from every village, so only makes sense to do the opposite. And a couple of these picks might surprise you. But before I get to surprising you at all, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. You know what's really a surprise? How fast my other YouTube channel, The Weeb Commander, is growing. See, on The Weeb Commander, I talk any anime but Naruto. And I figured, it won't grow that fast, so let's say if it hits 50,000 before the end of the year, I'll get a tattoo that says I heart Sasuke. That's 42,000. There's 2 months left. So let's say if Weeb Commander gets to 75K before the end of the year, we'll implement the rule that I can never cover that tattoo. With another tattoo, that is. All's in your court. So the Kage, often referred to as the strongest members of their respected hidden ninja villages. The pinnacle of power within a village, the front line of defense against the outside world. Masters of their respective jutsus who have led their nation into wars. Within the Naruto community, they are hailed as some of the strongest members of the show. But that's not the case for all of them. You see, we're all aware that in the Naruto universe, powerful generations came and went. There was times when nation had to focus more on politicking than fighting. Times where nations elected thinkers instead of fighters, or even times of peace that have ushered in weaker Kage. In reality, the real reason that a weak Kage gets elected is highly dependent on the village that elected them. The history of every village is very complicated, and the events that lead up to a weak Kage being elected are different for every village. But since this is technically a ranking video and I want this video to do views, we're going to talk about the weakest Hokages from weakest to strongest, meaning that we'll start with the weakest ever Hokage and work our way up. Now, obviously, this isn't a ranking of the 5 weakest Kages of all time. Number 1 on this list is probably top 10 Kage in terms of strength of all time. They just have the unfortunate factor of being from Konoha. So with no further ado, let's get to the weakest Kage of all time. Number 5, Korotsuchi. Korotsuchi is the 4th and current Tsuchi Kage, and she's the granddaughter of the 3rd Tsuchi Kage, Inoki. And don't take this as me ragging Korotsuchi, she's still very powerful in her own right, but when you consider her in comparison to other Kage, specifically the Tsuchi Kage, she's absolutely the weakest. Korotsuchi can't use Dust Release, something that we know both Mu and Inoki can use. Dust Release is a Keke Toda that's a combination of earth, wind, and fire. And by combining these 3 chakra elements into one Keke Toda, Dust Release is able to delete anything in a geometric shape created by the user on a cellular level. It's why it's called Dust Release, because anything within the square or the cylindrical tube that Mu makes quite literally turns to dust. And you can fire these geometric shapes at people at high velocities. So now you either have a square or a cylinder coming at you at a high velocity that if you even touch will literally vaporize you. And I know what you're saying,
well, Nick, what about the first Tsuchi Kage, Ishikawa?
See, well, it's technically never been confirmed that Ishikawa could use Dust Release. It's also never been explicitly stated that Mu created it. See, all we know about Dust Release is that Mu passed it down to Inoki, meaning that Mu taught Inoki how to use it, meaning that Dust Release is not genetic like the Sharingan or something like that. It's a jutsu anybody can learn. Well, not anybody, you get it. And considering the fact that Ishikawa was strong enough to unify the entire land of stone under the banner of the Hidden Stone Village, and also in the anime was stated to be part of the Kamizuru clan, a clan from the Hidden Stone that's able to control bees, much like how the Aburame are able to control beetles. And we also learned from the remaining members of the Kamizuru clan that Ishikawa was the symbol of strength that held together the entire village and the name of the Kamizuru clan. So if we give Ishikawa both Dust Release and the ability to control bees, that's a lot stronger than Korotsuchi. And while Korotsuchi may not have a Keke Toda, she does have a Keke Genkai. See, Korotsuchi is able to use Lava Release, but not in the way that Mai the 5th Mizukage can. See, Lava Release is kind of just what happens when you combined Earth and Fire chakra releases. And therefore, Korotsuchi's Lava Release is actually either Quicklime or Ash. Korotsuchi's Quicklime works a lot like concrete. She can expel it, and then with the combination of her water release, she can make it harden into concrete. This is good for like catching enemies in traps. On top of this, she also has her Ash Stone. Ash Stone looks a bit like hardened magma to me. Essentially, it's a viscous stone that Korotsuchi can spit out to seal people. Kind of like the concrete. So whether or not she's using ashen stone or quicklime, basically what she can do with her lava release is make rocks melty and then hard again. And on top of that, in the novels, we learn that Kuratsuchi can use yin release, which puts her only at earth, fire, water, and yin. 4 releases. I mean, battle IQ wise, she is one of the smarter ones when it comes to the current Kage. She was able to trick Kabuto into falling into a trap, and Kabuto is like galaxy brain level smart. And on top of all that, we learned in the novelization of the Boruto movie that she's the best genjutsu user of the 5 current Kage, which isn't really saying a lot when we consider the fact that the current Kages are Naruto, Chojuro, Darui, Korotsuchi, and then Gaara. When was the last time we saw any of those 4 that weren't Korotsuchi ever even attempt to use genjutsu? And lastly, we actually have seen her duke it out with a couple of Naruto shadow clones, and she was able to defeat a couple of them, but it's not like Naruto is going all out. But since we're talking about the current Kages, the next Kage on the list is the current Kage for the Hidden Mist Village, Chojuro. You see, is this technically fair to Chojuro? I can't really say. The Hidden Mist Village has had 6 Mizukage, Chojuro being the 6th. And I can tell you right now, for sure he is weaker than the 2nd, 4th, and 5th. But we don't even know the 3rd Mizukage's name. And we don't know the abilities like even in the slightest of the first Mizukage, Byakuren. Pretty much all we know about Byakuren is that amongst the first round of Kages, he was the most intelligent. He's stated to have excelled in worldly wisdom. Is that enough for me to say that he's stronger than Chojuro? Probably not. But at the same time, Byakuren did live through the Warring States period. He was very old by the time he became the first Mizukage. And even though Chojuro hasn't lived a necessarily peaceful lifestyle, nothing in Naruto's history combat-wise compares to the Warring States period. And after the conclusion of the Warring States period, he was elected as the strongest and most competent person in the Land of Water to lead their village. And that alone, I'm giving him the edge over Chojuro. But now I know what you're saying. You're saying,
Well, Nick, then what about the 3rd Mizukage?
shut up. I don't want to talk about him. We don't even know his name. But for the 2nd, 4th, and 5th, do I really even need to explain to you why Chojuro is weaker than them? The 2nd Mizukage was Gengetsu Hozuki. And if you picked up on that last name there, that means he's a part of the Hozuki clan, the same one as Suigetsu and Mongetsu, meaning that he had the ability Hydrolysis, meaning his entire body was made of water, making him impervious to physical attacks. He could summon a giant clam that put you under Genjutsu, and he technically killed Mu, the 2nd Tsuchi Kage. The 4th Mizukage was Yagura, who was a perfect Jinchuriki for Isobu the Three Tails. On top of that, he fought Juzo and Itachi simultaneously, killed Juzo with his own sword, and had Itachi retreat. The 5th Mizukage has 2 separate Kekkei Genkai, the Boyo release and the Lava release. And her Boyo release would have killed Sasuke. It was quite literally melting his Susanoo ribcage if Obito hadn't saved Sasuke. And then there's Chojuro. Listen, same situation as Korotsuchi. Chojuro, not weak. The mist is actually stated to only elect the strongest person in the village at that moment to be the Mizukage. They go 100% off strength. That being said, he has 1 chakra release, and I'll let you guess what it is. It's water. Mind you, we've only ever seen him use that water release in the anime, not even in the manga. But we can't use that argument against Chojuro because ninjutsu isn't his thing. Chojuro was a master of kenjutsu. Chojuro, long before he was the Mizukage, was elected to the 7th Swordsman of the Mist, where he was chosen to wield the Hiramekirai, also known as the Split Sword. Amongst all of the swords in the 7 Swords of the Mist, this sword is the 2nd most difficult to wield, with only Samehada being higher. And even amongst the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist, Chojuro is referred to as a master swordsman. In fact, we saw him use his swordsmanship in the 4th Great Shinobi World War to defeat Black Setsu. May or may not be the weakest member of the Akatsuki, but like, we're trying to find good things to say here. And Chojuro's swordsmanship is to such a level that even against 7 wielders of 7 Swords of the Mist, Chojuro was able to systematically defeat every single one of them with a simple katana. And about 30 episodes later in Boruto, we also saw him fight alongside the rest of the Kages against the Otsutsuki, specifically Kinshiki, who was also a Kenjutsu user. You see, Chojuro took a big step forward after the 4th Great Shinobi World War, which is why he was elected to become the 6th Mizukage. And amongst this new generation of Kage, he's considered to be the best Kenjutsu user and assassin, which once again isn't like the world's highest praise, considering that the only other Kage who uses swords is Darui. But in reality, the majority of Chojuro's strength comes through the split sword. See, the split sword is a sword that you coat in chakra, and once it's coated in chakra, it can change its form. It can act as a blade or a hammer or an axe. And these weapons are so powerful that Chojuro, while in hammer form, was able to smash Sasuke through a wall with Susanoo ribcage. And in fact, in Boruto, it was stated that when Chojuro has the split sword, there is no equal on Earth for him in Genjutsu. The swords don't stop tailed beast bombs or Genjutsu or lava, so I'm sorry Chojuro, you're the weakest ever Mizukage. But since we're talking about Kage who are dependent on their weapons, next up on the list is Shimon. I just heard the majority of you just go,
Who's Shimon?
and honestly, fair question. Shimon is the second ever Kage, leader of the Hidden Sand. See, you might be saying that we know nothing about Shimon and therefore I shouldn't be ranking him the lowest because I have nothing to actually rank him there with, but amongst all of the Kage, we actually know the most about the Kage as an aggregate. You see, we have actual feats from almost every single Kage except Shimon. What do I mean by that? So for the first Kage, we know that he was the strongest person in the Land of Wind, and he used the power that he had to pull in all the nomadic tribes in the Land of Wind under his roof, meaning that Redo was so powerful that he quite literally unified a nation on its own. But that's not even where Redo's feats stop. See, we also know that Redo was strong enough to capture Shukaku on his own. When Hashirama went around collecting all of the tailed beasts to hand out to the other villages before the First Great Shinobi World War, Redo told him that he had already caught Shukaku. And while he technically tried to parlay this into money, and that's most likely what got him assassinated, still, he caught Shukaku. Catching a tailed beast, regardless of how many tails it has, is a very difficult thing to do. As to how he did this, we're not entirely sure, but we do know one thing works very well against Shukaku, and that ironically would be Shukaku's own Kekkei Genkai, magnet release. You see, we understand that Rasa in the third Kazekage, whose name we also do not know, were able to suppress Shukaku whenever he got out of control because gold and iron are heavier than sand, which Shukaku is made of. And therefore, by funneling their gold and or iron into Shukaku, they would be able to bind him relatively easily. Therefore, it's not insane to assume that Redo had some form of magnet release that allowed him to capture Shukaku. As for the third Kazekage, he was referred to as the strongest Kazekage of all time, which is hard to believe considering the fact he died to sorcery, but still. And we know that he was able to control iron sand, which we have seen is an incredibly powerful technique. Now, I could understand if you would want Rasa, the fourth Kazekage, to be the true answer for this list. He's a really bad guy, and he was cut down by Orochimaru. However, he was surprised by Orochimaru, and surprise feats don't count. Regardless of whether or not he was surprised, though, he was still able to use magnet release in the form of his gold dust. Now, gold isn't nearly as strong or plentiful as iron, but still being able to control and manifest a metal is a very powerful ability. And then obviously there's Gaara, who is probably the true actual strongest Kazekage of all time, so it's not him either. Which leaves us with Shimon, the second Kazekage. See, we don't know if Shimon had a magnet release. What we do know though is he was the first person to apply puppets to a military effort, implying that most likely instead of using magnet release, Shimon was a puppet user. Here's the thing though, puppet users have a funny way of recycling puppets. Greinichu uses the 10 puppets made by Monzaimon Shikamatsu, the man who created puppets. Sasori turns a bunch of people into puppets that Kankuro then later uses after Sasori dies, and so on and so forth. However, no puppets from Shimon ever pop up, and Shimon himself is never made into a puppet by Sasori, implying that there was nothing really special about him, or that he was dead before Sasori started making people into puppets, which is more likely the answer. On top of militarizing puppets, Shimon was also responsible for doing research on Jinchurikis, more specifically how to increase the bond between a tailed beast and the Jinchuriki to capitalize on the power of this combination, seeding the idea for Rasa to make the perfect weapon in Gaara. So while I'm not taking anything away from him intellectually, what he accomplished for the Hidden Sand was probably the most important out of any of the Kage. If you can't do magnet release, you're probably the weakest Kazekage. And with that, we're down to the two strongest villages in Naruto, the Hidden Cloud and the Hidden Leaf. It makes sense that the two strongest villages would have the two strongest, weakest Kages. The question becomes, which of these two villages has the weakest Kage? And the answer to that question is relatively obvious. It's the Hidden Cloud. Now, the Hidden Cloud is a bit like the Hidden Mist here. I know for a fact that the person I chose as the weakest Raikage is weaker than the third and fourth Raikages. I just don't know the strength of the first or the second Raikages. Because as you've guessed it, I've chosen the weakest Raikage in the Hidden Cloud's history to be Darui, the fifth Raikage. This puts Darui into a very similar situation to Chojuro. I don't know how strong the first or the second Raikage were. However, similar to Chojuro's situation, the first Raikage did live through the Warring States period, and he was right next to the Land of Fire. At least in the Land of Water, there was an ocean between the Land of Water and where Madara and Hashirama were battling it out. That's not the case for the Hidden Cloud. Basically, all we know about the first Raikage is that he sent the Gold and Silver brothers to capture Kurama. But I want you to look into that statement right there. See, in an era when the Gold and Silver brothers were alive, both descendants of Hagoromo, mind you, A, the first Raikage, because the first through fourth are all named A, was elected as Raikage. Now, with the Hidden Cloud isn't the hit and miss and they don't elect 100% based on power, power definitely plays into it. And in an era when either Ginkaku or Kinkaku could have been elected as the first ever Raikage, A was elected. Also, he was modeled after Jimi Hendrix, so I'm not gonna put him last. As for A, the second Raikage, I also wasn't gonna put him last because he lived through the first and second Great Ninja Wars. Probably. I can't say for sure whether he lived through them, but the timeline largely implies that he did. We know he at least died before the third Great Shinobi World's War because the third Raikage, A, was the Raikage during the third Great Shinobi World War. And mind you, in the first Great Shinobi World War, the Hidden Cloud was so powerful, Tobirama wanted a treaty with them because Tobirama understood that a treaty between the Hidden Leaf and the Hidden Cloud would for sure end the war. And considering the fact that the second Raikage was the first Raikage's elected right-hand man, it's not crazy to assume he was very powerful. And in combination with the Gold and Silver brothers, probably one of the driving forces keeping the Hidden Cloud so powerful that the Hidden Leaf thought that they would be valuable allies that would be able to end the first Great Shinobi World War. And once again, mind you, after the death of the first Raikage, he decided that A, the second Raikage, would be the best fit for Raikage. Mind you, once again, Gold and Silver brothers were still alive, and at this point, nine-tailed Jinchurikis. And let's be real, Darui is not stronger than the third Raikage, who quite literally fought 10,000 people for 3 days and only died when he depleted himself of chakra, and the fourth Raikage, who was the fastest man on Earth not related to Naruto, because Naruto is also related to Naruto. They're the same person, but there's a reason that Darui is second on this list. His abilities are nothing to scoff at, and being the weakest Raikage is a lot like being the weakest Hokage. It doesn't mean that much. You're still probably dog walking 80% of the verse. See, Darui is the first person on this list to have like genuinely sick abilities. By the way, I'm just not realizing that I never really explained why Shimon would be stronger than Korotsuchi or Chojuro. I'm assuming that he was a well-accomplished puppeteer and like very intelligent, and therefore his battle IQ would probably put him above either of those two. Moving back to the Raikages, Darui was lucky enough to be trained pretty much exclusively by the third Raikage. And from the third Raikage, Darui learned a couple of very important things. Most specifically, Black Lightning. See, Black Lightning is pretty much just like regular Lightning Release, except significantly more powerful and way cooler. See, while Lightning Release is usually used to stun an opponent, Black Lightning pushes the power of Lightning Release to such a degree that it can not only stun opponents, but it can also kill multiple in one strike. We saw Darui use Lightning Release Black Panther, which makes a Black Panther out of Black Lightning, which he can then fire at a crowd of enemies and control to weave through as many people as possible to kill as many people as possible. On top of this, Darui has enough chakra to increase the effectiveness of Black Lightning by using a shadow clone. But Darui's really cool abilities do not end there. You see, Darui also has a Kage Genkai, Storm Release, which is the combination of water and lightning release. See, Darui can use water release at an incredibly high level, and when he uses his water release, he can funnel lightning through it to increase the power of his lightning release. In fact, the tattoos on Darui's shoulders represent water and lightning. Specifically, the tattoo that says lightning represents Black Lightning and how he learned it from the third Raikage. So even down to this man's appearance, he's rubbing it in your face that he can use Storm Release. And on top of all of that, he can also use Wind Release. And I know what you're saying,
Nick, didn't you rag on Korotsuchi for only having 4 releases, one of which was a Keke Genkai?
Black Lightning, significantly stronger and cooler than Melty Stone. Not to mention that we've seen Darui keep up with the speed of a lightning-enhanced fourth Raikage. Remember the fastest dude not related to Naruto? Implying that Darui's speed without lightning enhancement is comparable to that of the fourth Raikage with lightning enhancement. And on top of that, Kinshiki stated that Darui's taijutsu skills were comparable to Naruto and Sasuke's. Mind you, Naruto is one of the best users of taijutsu on Earth. Darui also basically single-handedly defeated both the Gold and Silver brothers, who at the moment were also Edo Tensei, which means infinite chakra and infinite regeneration. And since we're talking about his fight against the Gold and Silver brothers, that also gives us a look into the amount of chakra Darui has. You see, during this battle, Darui actually used 3 of the treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths. paths. And not only did the usage of these 3 tools not kill him from chakra depletion, he went on to continue fighting. Mind you, and I guess this isn't the world's best example, but Tenten used one of the tools of the Sage of Six Paths once and passed out. And his Storm Release Laser Circus allows him to quite literally create lasers out of his Storm Release that he can control with his hands, allowing him to shoot lasers through people at long distances very effectively. Oh, and yeah, he's also incredible at Kenjutsu. He quite literally beat Suigetsu in a Kenjutsu battle. And sure, he has a typing advantage against Suigetsu, considering he can use lightning and Suigetsu is literally made of water. But still, Suigetsu is one of the strongest Kenjutsu users in the entirety of Naruto. The more I talk about Darui, the more I realize he may not be weaker than the first or the second. But we're sticking with it! Which leads us to our final entry on the list, the weakest Hokage of all time. I'd like to say before we get into this spot, I literally just did a video on this character. He is one of my favorite characters of all time. With that out of the way, the weakest Hokage of all time is Kakashi. Am I happy about it? No! But is it the truth? Yes. I love Kakashi. I quite literally just did a 37-minute video on Kakashi. You should go watch it. Kakashi, at the peak of his power, was probably top 5 strongest people we've ever seen in the entire show, including Boruto. Ishiki, Momoshiki, Naruto, Sasuke, MS Kakashi, that feels wrong, but I'm sticking with it. I forgot about Code. I also forgot about a bunch of other people. You get it. He was strong at the peak of his powers. But the Kakashi we got as a Hokage was not at the peak of his powers. You see, Kakashi during the war arc is incredibly powerful. He trained during the time skip. All of the battles that he fights during Shippuden make him much stronger. Grappling with his grief and his PTSD allow him to achieve heights of strength he never dreamed imaginable. And at the end of the war, Obito somehow forced ghosts to Kamui into his face and gives Kakashi DMS. Now, DMS Kakashi Susanoo is probably the strongest Susanoo we've ever seen. The ability to use Kamui Shuriken, a shuriken about the size of a school bus that Kakashi can throw in and out of the universe to appear to hit you basically wherever you are, is disgustingly broken. There's very few people in the show this wouldn't instantly kill. But unfortunately, after Kaguya is defeated, Obito reforced Ghost his eyes back into his face so he can continue to go be a child with Rin in the Pure Lands. They just never explained any of that, and it's still, to this day, pisses me off. Like, hey Madara, you feel bad about starting the 4th grade Shinobi World War? How about you force Ghost your Rinnegan into Sasuke? So by the time that Kakashi is elected as the 6th Hokage, about 2 years after the conclusion of the war arc, he is no longer Kakashi of the Sharingan, or the copycat ninja for that matter. After losing the Sharingan, Kakashi can still do every single jutsu he's ever copied, which does give him access to over 1,000 jutsus, but he can no longer, at least as easily, copy other people's jutsus. I mean, if you're just hitting hand signs like this, he could probably copy it, but no more Sharingan also means no more Kamui, which is undoubtedly the most useful Sharingan ability known to man. However, with no more Sharingan, it does technically mean that Kakashi has more chakra. While he doesn't technically have more chakra, his chakra doesn't deplete as quickly, meaning that more likely after losing the Sharingan, his durability and stamina went up while his speed, strength, and reflexes all went down. The strength of a Mangekyo Sharingan truly cannot be understated. And without the Sharingan, Kakashi can no longer do his world-famous Raikiri, which is what Kakashi's Shidori is called. But that didn't stop him from replacing his Raikiri. You see, after the war arc, specifically in Kakashi's light novels that takes place 2 years after the war arc, Kakashi creates a jutsu called Purple Lightning, and this ability is actually based off the Storm Release Purple Lightning that Madara had in his Ten Tails form. So with the creation of Purple Lightning, Kakashi has an ability that has the killing ability of his Raikiri, but doesn't give him tunnel vision, and therefore there's no need for a Sharingan to compensate for said tunnel vision. Inherently, Purple Lightning is stronger than the Raikiri, but that doesn't make up for the big step back that Kakashi took when he lost his Sharingan. On top of that, obviously Kakashi was a child genius long before having his Sharingan. He was promoted to a Jonin at the age of 10, and after acquiring his Sharingan, he became an Anbu captain at the age of, I think, 14? He fought toe-to-toe with Zabuza, Kakuzo, Itachi, and even Kaguya. We even in Boruto saw him briefly go toe-to-toe with Kashin Koji, and this is without a Sharingan. He has all 5 nature releases and yin and yang. He is undeniably strong. Being undeniably strong isn't enough if we're talking about Hokages. See, listen, obviously, I know the one everybody's thinking about. You're saying,
Kakashi was weaker than Tsunade?
yes. I'm sorry, but yes. There's no denying that Hashirama, Tobi, Rama, Hiruzen, Minato, Naruto are all stronger than Kakashi without a Sharingan. I don't have to go through those points with you. What we're hyper-focused on as a community is Tsunade. So let me just put you onto something here. Tsunade has lightning, earth, fire, water, yin, and yang release. The only thing that she doesn't have have that Kakashi does is Wind Release. Now, obviously, Kakashi has an arsenal of 1,000 jutsus. And if it really came down to a one-on-one, obviously he could use something like Reaper Death Seal. But I don't consider a jutsu that kills you as well a wind state. Tsunade is the greatest medical ninja of all time. She basically counteracted every single poison Granny Chiyo ever created. She found a cure for the tricolored pills. She fixed Rock Lee when nobody else could. But on top of all of that, she also can summon Lady Katsuya, who was unequivocally, outside of maybe Monkey King Enma, the strongest summoning in Naruto. With Lady Katsuya by her side, Tsunade was basically able to keep the majority of Konoha alive against pain. Lady Katsuya as a healer is so effective that it quite literally pulled Tsunade back together after being bisected. Not to mention, in terms of chakra-assisted strength, the only person maybe stronger than Tsunade is Sakura. And if we consider the fact that Tsunade is the person who taught Sakura her chakra control, and therefore we assume that Tsunade's chakra control is equal to Sakura's, some of the feats we've seen from Sakura, we can probably see from Tsunade, like the ability to minutely apply chakra to a hand in such a way that you can catch ninjutsu and throw it back at somebody. And while obviously Tsunade's strength of 100 seal is not as powerful as Sakura's because she's always draining chakra from it to make herself look young, with mitotic regeneration in the strength of 100 seal being able to keep Tsunade alive for 100 deaths, in combination with the fact that she has almost every single nature release, the strength to crack a Susanoo rib cage, and possibly the chakra control of Sakura, I'm sorry, but I have to put her above Kakashi with no Sharingan. And I'm sorry, but I don't think that's as controversial as you might think it is. We haven't even brought up the fact that she is both Senju and Uzumaki, implying that her chakra and life force is multiple times higher than Kakashi's. Tsunade is 70 in Boruto, and I guarantee you she could still crack heads like she could in the War Arc, which is insane when you consider the fact that the drawbacks of mitotic regeneration is that technically it should have shortened her life, and yet she's still fine. Nerfed, but fine. The joke works two ways. And that's it, the weakest Kage from every village. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my list? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell.